tonight. It's a new dawn in Anambra State as Professor Charles Soludo is sworn in as governor in an event described as low-key held at the government house. Confusion at the inauguration of Governor Soludo as two prominent citizens, Bianca Ojukwu and Ebele Obiano, wife of ex-governor, engaged in a brawl. Governor of Sokoto State Aminu Tambuwal joins list of presidential aspirants under the PDP against consultations ahead of the 2023 race.
And some international news from London. Ukraine accuses Russian forces of bombing a shelter that was being used to house civilians in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol.
And on business news tonight, Debt Management Office says total debt profile for the country hits 39.5 trillion naira.
On sports news tonight, reigning African champions, the Super Falcons of Nigeria, will face Canada in a two-leg friendly in April as part of preparations for the 2022 Women's Africa Cup of Nations.
And from Abuja, National Electricity Regulatory Commission to review tariffs every 6 months as the chairman of NEC confirms removal of electricity subsidy.
Anambra now has a new man in government house to drive the affairs of the state for the next 4 years. Here's Professor Charles Soludo, who was today sworn in as the 6th democratically elected governor of the state, alongside his deputy, Dr. Onyekachukwu Ibezim, at the government house in Awka, the state capital. Professor Soludo, accompanied by his wife, took the oath of office administered by the state's chief judge, Justice Onoche Anyachebelu, in a low-key event. The swearing-in ceremony was witnessed by top government officials, including the immediate past governor, Willie Obiano.
This is the first time the quadrangle of the Anambra State Government House is being used as venue for the swearing-in of a governor-elect as select guests make their way here to witness a change of guard in Anambra State. The governor-elect, Professor Charles Soludo, in company of his wife and family, arrived at the arena, whilst others, including the deputy governor-elect, Dr. Onyeka Ibezim, political and traditional leaders, amongst others, had made earlier entrances. On his final official moment as governor, Mr. Willie Obiano makes his entry, inspects the guard mounted in his honor, marking the commencement of proceedings. And without much ado, the Chief Judge of Anambra State administers the oath of office on the Deputy Governor-elect. Next, the Governor-elect, Professor Charles Soludo, is sworn in.
I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So help me God. So help me God.
Now, as the Executive Governor of Anambra State, Professor Charles Soludo emphasizes his vision to make Anambra a prosperous land.
Dr. Ibezim and I will work very hard every day to make you proud. We will seek active collaboration and cooperation with the federal government, our neighboring and other states, as well as the international community, to provide our state truly people-centered governance. We will consolidate the progress made by our predecessors to continue Anambra's upward trajectory.
Some of the guests expressed their optimism about the new administration.
Governance is about caring for the poor. It's about ensuring that people are pulled out of poverty. And look at his promises today. He consistently maintained that he's going to work for the people. He's going to secure the states. You know, we say this state is the light of the nation. That's what our Christians did. And that's what we want it to be.
The event was, however, disrupted momentarily by the altercation between the wife of the outgoing governor, Mrs. Ebele Obiano, and the wife of late Emeka Ojukwu, Mrs. Bianca Ojukwu. Both women engaged in a physical brawl before they were separated by security operatives. Meanwhile, according to the new governor's schedule, he is to work for 8 hours immediately after the swearing-in ceremony. And true to his words, he retires to his office in the government house, where a 4-year journey to reposition the state begins.
Meanwhile, the newly sworn-in governor of Anambra State has apologized to all Anambra people and guests who attended his inauguration over the brawl between the wife of his predecessor, Mrs. Ebele Obiano, and wife of late warlord Bianca Ojukwu. In a statement by his media aide, Professor Soludo said the breach was caused by improper communication, which arose from a personal issue between the two parties involved. The governor notes that the breach, which disrupted proceedings at the event, happened after the wife of the former governor approached Mrs. Ojukwu and muttered some words that led to fisticuffs. Meanwhile, Governor Soludo has made 3 key appointments following his swearing-in. They are Professor Solomon Chukwulobelu, who retains his office as Secretary to State Government, Mr. Chukwuma Okoli as the Accountant General, and Mr. Glama Nwoye, the Deputy Chief of Staff and State Chief of Protocol Council. In more political news, more aspirants for the presidential seat are emerging. The latest is Governor Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State, who's declared his intention to run in the 2023 presidential election. Governor Tambuwal announced his ambition to journalists after meeting with state chairman of the People's Democratic Party in Abuja. While calling for unity among party members ahead of the general election, he maintains that the PDP remains the hope of Nigerians.
You know the position of state party chairman in terms of stakeholding, in terms of leadership, in terms of reaching out to the grassroots. They are key and critical mass of leadership of our party at the state level and at that level that is very, very important. So the interaction has been very wonderful, mutually beneficial, and I believe that we are beginning to consolidate on our partnership with them. Well, it is about consultation on the possibility of my running for the office of the president and seeking the mandate of our party members and leaders as standard flag bearer of the PDP in 2023 presidential election. Consultations are ongoing, and we will have to comply with the INEC guidelines as a responsible political party. So nothing stops the consultation from continuing. Unity of purpose and understanding and working together for us to actually realize the all-important goal of rescuing Nigeria.
Now, the governors of Yobe and Niger states, Maimala Buni and Abubakar Sani Bello, have been speaking on issues that unfolded in the party while the governor, Buni, was out of the country. Governor Buni, who is chairman of the All Progressives Congress Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee, had on his return approved the subcommittees for the March 26th APC 2022 National Convention. After their meeting in Abuja, both governors say all hands are on deck to ensure successful national convention, but were silent on the aborted NEC meeting, which was supposed to hold earlier today.
Since when I travel, you know, the party has not stopped, and His Excellency has done very well in managing the affairs of the party. So we are here to discuss certain issues going forward. We are now at the finishing line. Of course, you know, the convention is at hand, just 26th of March. So we are putting heads together to ensure that we achieve the speed of accomplishment.
Well, like for the past 1 week, I've been acting as national chairman, and what I can tell you is we made a lot of progress towards convention. Like you know, we saw in the state party chairman, we adopted some of the zoning system, and we adopted some of the documents or decisions of CCECs before he left.
Back to the presidential race, another presidential aspirant under the African Democratic Congress, Professor Kingsley Mualu, is accusing the All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party of bringing Nigeria to its knees. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, Professor Mualu called on Nigerians to vote out the two major political parties who have led Nigeria so far. He wants citizens to get their voter cards, mobilize and vote for a new order in the 2023 general elections.
Life in Nigeria is becoming increasingly unbearable for Nigerians. Our country faces multiple crises, ranging from acute economic difficulties to deepening social despair and continuing insecurity. Rather than the situation getting better, we see it getting worse every day. Many Nigerians today can no longer afford a tuber of yam. They cannot afford a bag of rice. Increasingly, many cannot even afford a loaf of bread. So I condemn the failure of the government of Nigeria to invest in education. And that is a fundamental threat to Nigeria's future. We approved, the National Assembly, I did this in 2019, and I'm doing it again for 2023 as currently a presidential aspirant of the African Democratic Congress, the ADC. We are not here to say that all hope is lost. What we are here to say is that there is hope of a turnaround in the situation of the country and in our realities as citizens.
Away from politics, as the Russian invasion of Ukraine continues, the federal government says it is analyzing the situation with a view to coming up with a new policy on trade with the troubled nation. That's according to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Ni Adebayo, who explained that the ministry's trade department has been mandated to carry out the review and institute a report which would be submitted to the president for his approval. The minister made this known during the weekly ministerial briefing at the State House. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Omezuke, was there.
Thank you. In keeping with one of its promises to advance Nigeria's trade profile, the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, whose turn it is at this week's ministerial briefing, addresses concerns about the consequences of the Ukraine-Russia war on trade relationship between Nigeria and both countries.
I can assure you that my ministry is looking at all the issues involved, and since the war has come up, the Ministry of the Trade Department in my ministry is looking at all the things that we import and that we export to them with a view to coming up with a policy paper which we will be presenting to Mr. President.
Nigeria has received a total of $84.3 million in capital imports from Russia. Sugar is among the number of items imported into the country. The minister underscores an optimism that Nigeria will attain self-sufficiency in the product in 10 years.
We're looking at Nigeria being self-sufficient in sugar production in 10 years. We're hoping and we believe with the programs that we have in place that within the next 10 years we will be 100% self-sufficient in sugar, and not only that, we will be able to export sugar produced in Nigeria.
Concerns are also raised about the proposed levies on alcoholic beverages and sweetened beverages and its impact on local sugar manufacturing.
Yes, in the long term, it might have an effect on sugar producers, but in the short term, it will not. At the present moment, our sugar intake in Nigeria is we import 1.7 million tons of raw sugar every year. At the present moment, we are only manufacturing, yes, less than 5%, right? Less than 5% of that is locally manufactured. So it gives us an opportunity to build up what we are manufacturing.
He further gives reasons for the dysfunctional Calabar and Warri ports, explaining that repair work and dredging issues needs to be sorted out for the ports to accommodate bigger vessels. In the interim, he says, new ports will be built in Lekki and Badagry. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
In part two after the break, 63 people reportedly abducted by terrorists in Kachia local government area of Kaduna State as fire razes houses in an IDP camp in Borno State. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. If it has joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Professor Chukwuma Soludo sworn in as governor of Anambra State in a low-key ceremony held at the government house. Confusion at the inauguration of Governor Soludo as Bianca Ojukwu and Ebele Obiano, wife of ex-governor, engaged in a brawl. Governor of Sokoto State Aminu Tambuwal joins list of presidential aspirants under the PDP, says he will run in 2023. And Ukraine accuses Russian forces of bombing civilians in the city of Mariupol. To security, no fewer than 63 people have been reportedly abducted by suspected terrorists who attacked Agunu Dutse and Katol communities in Kachia local government area of Kaduna State. Although the state and police authorities are yet to comment on the attack, a resident of the area told Channels Television that the terrorists first attacked Katol village on Wednesday night, where they kidnapped 16 people. The attackers, who were said to be carrying sophisticated weapons, also stormed Agunu Dutse in the early hours of today, shooting sporadically to scare the residents. During the operation, the terrorists reportedly took about 47 people away to an unknown destination, while some others sustained various degrees of injury. Following the attack, other residents of the two communities fled their homes to avoid being kidnapped by the terrorists. And less than 3 weeks after fire destroyed houses at an internally displaced persons camp in Konduga and Munakaraj in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, another set of 448 houses, mostly shanties, have been burnt at Mafa, the headquarters of Mafa Local Government Council of the state. The latest incident occurred at the IDP camp located at Government Girls Secondary School, Mafa, a distance of about 50 kilometers from Maiduguri, the state capital. According to the zonal coordinator northeast of the National Emergency Management Agency, Usman Mohammed Aji, no life was lost, but property worth millions of naira were destroyed. He explained that NEMA and firefighters have been conducting sensitization campaigns for the returnees to forestall further occurrence of fire outbreaks. I'm going to hand over now to Linda Kigbe in Abuja for more on the news at 10. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Amarachi. Now, for Nigerians who may have been wondering about government's position on electricity subsidy, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has confirmed its removal, but explains that the commission will review tariff rates every 6 months. The chairman of the commission, Mr. Sanusi Garba, says that it is the duty of the electricity distribution companies to inform their customers of such tariff review outcome. He was addressing a news conference in Abuja.
Now, subsidy is a policy issue determined by government. Government will decide that the rates calculated or agreed by the regulator may at this time not be passed on to consumers. It has happened many times. Now, in the last 4 or 5 years, the level of subsidy has gradually been reduced because I think all of you can understand that you cannot run the electricity market on life support and say that, well, the investors should not get their return on investment until government steps in to provide the required funding itself. So that policy decision is as announced by the Honorable Minister of Finance. The subsidies had been at one time as high as 600 billion a year, and gradually coming down to, I think, about 30 billion or so this year. That decision of subsidy rests squarely as a policy decision of the administration, and we take policy direction from the government on what to do with rates.
Now to legal matters. Justice Nnamdi Dingba of the Federal High Court in Abuja has discharged and acquitted a former Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Mohammed Umar, of alleged diversion of 66 million naira from the account of the Nigerian Air Force. The judge held that he found no evidence linking Air Marshal Umar to the alleged instruction to transfer the said funds for the renovation of his private property in Abuja. He faced a one-count charge of laundering funds allegedly siphoned from the account of the Nigerian Air Force during his time as the Chief of Air Staff between 2010 and 2012.
The former Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Mohammed Umar, at the Federal High Court, Abuja, ahead of the judgment involving his alleged diversion of over 4.8 billion naira from the Nigerian Air Force's account within 1 year. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission had in 2016 filed a 7-count charge bordering on money laundering against Air Marshal Umar. The anti-graft agency claimed that the defendants used part of the funds removed from NAF's account to acquire properties at choice areas in Abuja and Kaduna. Ruling on the no-case submission filed by the defendant, the trial judge, Justice Nnamdi Dingba, dismissed 6 of the counts and ordered him to open his defense in respect of the remaining count. Delivering judgment, the judge said that he was not convinced that the prosecution discharged the burden placed on them to requisite standard on count 7, which Umar was called upon to defend, having earlier been acquitted of other counts. Justice Dingba also said that it would be dangerous to speculate on a wild assumption that the defendant ought to be aware of every financial transaction from NAF's account. The judge, however, held that inasmuch as the evidence provided by the prosecution was not strong enough to warrant the conviction of the defendant as charged, it would be against good conscience of the court to shut its eyes to the fact that Mr. Umar benefited from funds belonging to NAF. He opined that allowing the defendants to retain the benefit will be a clear case of unjust enrichment under the law of restitution. The prosecuting counsel, Mr. Sylvanus Tahir, had told the court that even though the prosecution could not prove that the 66 million naira left NAF account, it was able to prove that 57 million naira left in 2 tranches of 47 million and 10 million naira.
Now, you are all here, and you heard what the judgment is. The accused has been discharged and acquitted on that sole count upon which the trial was concluded. While the court did not find him guilty as charged, yet the court made an order that the sum of 57 million naira that was directly transferred from the account of the Nigerian Air Force, of which the defendant was the chief accounting officer, should be returned to the federal government.
He ordered Mr. Umar to refund the money to NAF, irrespective of the order of court acquitting and discharging him, and file a report of compliance with the registry of the court, and serve same on the EFCC within 10 working days from the day the judgment was delivered. He further ruled that if the defendants failed to comply with the orders, his property at number 1853 Deng Xiaoping Street off Mahathir Mohammed Street, Asokoro Extension, Abuja, will stand permanently forfeited to the federal government.
And news just reaching us says the EFCC has arrested former Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano. We'll bring you more details as the news develops. And now we know how to make you listen. Those were the words of the women protesters at the gates of the National Assembly to the leadership of the National Assembly, who have refused to address the protesters even as the protest entered day 9. The women say they have been civil and carried out a peaceful protest for 3 days. However, they may be forced to resort to other methods if they continue to be ignored. Our correspondent Kayla Megwa reports.
For the 9th time, Democracy Avenue, just outside the gates of the National Assembly, plays host to the protesting Nigerian women. It is another day of protest for Nigerian women, demanding they be treated fairly by the National Assembly and rescind their decision to drop bills favorable to women. It's been 9 days since the women took over the gates of the National Assembly, demanding to speak with the National Assembly leadership in person, rejecting representatives sent to them. So far, they've not been given that audience. The women expressed their grievances.
Of representatives, they don't talk. They don't say, make we listen to these women, no, make we do something small. What did they do? It never reach. But we don't come to the level where some other people will say, no mind these women at the gate. You now see the audacity of some of the military, those who carry plenty military. They work at compass like this. Animal sense. Animal sense. We they look them. But as far as we concern, if we did this gate, nobody will enter this gate. Yes. No retreat. No surrender.
The protesting women are insisting on 5 for 5 from the National Assembly and say they have already started mobilizing women at the local levels to ensure that lawmakers who voted against the gender bills are voted out of office.
Can Nigerian women affect the outcome of an election? These women believe that they can. They've been at the front gates of the National Assembly for days now and still haven't gotten any response from the lawmakers. This threat that they're making to mobilize at the local levels, they say they're going to keep to that. But for now, they'll continue to solicit that the lawmakers listen to their demands, and they say they will do this every single day until that is done. From the gates of the National Assembly, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
And still on the breaking news, EFCC arrest former Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano. He was arrested at the Murtala International Airport in Lagos on his way to Houston, Texas. He is now in the custody of the EFCC in Lagos. Now still ahead on the news at 10, Debt Management Office says total debt profile for the country hits 39.5 trillion naira. That's some business news. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. To infrastructure development, the Oyo State government says it is committed to developing every area of the state by developing critical infrastructure for the people. At the commissioning of the 5.2 kilometers Gedu-Oroki-Ashikpa Road in Oyo State, the state governor Seyi Makinde says that in the past 2 years, his administration has attended to 500 kilometers of road, a development that is attracting investors into the state.
Road infrastructure indeed plays a crucial role by providing mobility for the efficient movement of people and goods. It's this infrastructure that has brought the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, and his guest, the governor of Bauchi State, Bala Mohammed, back to Atiba local government area to commission the 5.2-kilometer Gedu-Oroki-Sabo Ashikpa Road. First, the Commissioner of Works in the state provides an update on the infrastructure.
Provision of concrete curbs, pavement markings and provision of road signs, provision of street lights across the 5.2 kilometers stretch, and the location of existing public utilities. We also have the rehabilitation of hollow axis of about 141 meters length with an average width of 8 meters.
For the immediate Oyo community, this road network is a testimony of developmental strides.
We in Oyo are not ingrates. The landmark contributions of your administration to our holistic growth and development are truly worthy of sincere appreciation and genuine commendation.
For Governor Makinde, the provision of good road networks is key to development, and he wants to ensure that no zone is left behind.
We have successfully laid the proper foundation for engineering a modern Oyo State. As we have said repeatedly, we believe that anywhere that roads go, development follows.
Meanwhile, the Bauchi State Governor is asking Oyo State indigents to continue to support the administration.
bring people to the fore who can conquer the environment, who know what they are doing, who are not hungry for money, who are not coming to take their resources from IGR and put it in their pockets, who are ready to open new frontiers, develop new synergies.
To join His Excellency the Governor of Oji State as he unveils
To wrap up the occasion, the Oyo State Governor presents a talking drum and traditional fan to his guest.
That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks a lot, Linda. I'm just going to piggyback on the story about the former Anambra State Governor, Willie Obiano, who was today arrested at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos by the EFCC. The anti-corruption agency picked up the former governor on his way to board a flight to Houston, Texas, in the United States. Mr. Obiano, who has been on the EFCC watch list, has been taken to the Commission's office in Lagos. We'll be bringing you details of this as we get them. In other news now, over 220 teachers and chief inspectors of education drawn from Edo and Delta states have been awarded certificates of training following the conclusion of their Seplat Energy PLC NPDC Joint Venture Teachers Empowerment Program, also known as STEP. The keynote speaker at the awards ceremony, which held in Benin City, the Edo State capital, said that quality education would come at a cost, hence the need to leverage on technology to improve access to quality education.
Okuma Love, are you here? The beneficiaries of the second edition of Seplat Energy Teachers Empowerment Program, STEP, are announced for all to hear. The energy company says it's contributing its quota to national development by building capacity for teachers through technology-based training.
Non-executive director of Seplat Energy.
In his keynote address, the independent non-executive director of Seplat, Professor Fabian Ajogun, states that the gap between public and private schools can be bridged through technology.
Innovation and science provide access to the best practices in teaching and the fast-evolving learning platforms across the world. The technological divide between the urban and the rural areas must be bridged to provide for equity in access to basic education.
The Edo State government is one of the benefiting states. The Deputy Governor, Mr. Philip Shaibu, commends Seplat for this initiative. He adds that a bright future for the country rests on the shoulders of well-trained teachers.
For our teachers to be able to teach our children to the extent that they can be global competitors, they have to first be digital in nature, and they must understand what digitalization of our education and teaching means.
The facilitators of the event insist that the Seplat template for quality education through technology will be a role model for other states to emulate.
Someone needs to commit to paying the true cost of education. And once that is done, you're then able to give an assessment of whether you can leapfrog all the gaps that you have had over the years by leveraging technology.
It's an educational program which enables the teachers to teach effectively the STEAM education at the various schools. Today we trained over 200 of them, and last year we trained about 100 of them. So we know that this is a very important program, and we definitely will take it beyond these two states.
The activities continue with an education roundtable.
Thank you so much, sir. A round of applause for him.
For Seplat Energy, providing quality education should not be the responsibility of government alone. This program is just but a part of their numerous contributions to the education sector.
The family and friends of Major General Henry Adefokwe have held a memorial and book presentation in his honor. The astute military general and statesman lived a life of dedicated service to humanity, and his achievements are recorded in the book titled A Legacy of Honor. Major General Henry Edmund Adefokwe was many things to many people. He was a sportsman, diplomat, administrator, and medical doctor, among other numerous qualities. And this memorial and book presentation, put together by his family, is to celebrate his legacy.
His favorite words to all were, "All will be well."
A Legacy of Honor is a book that captures his achievements in his lifetime and his service to his country.
Professor Jide Osuntokun and Professor David Aworawo set themselves a monumental task in embarking on a joint enterprise, namely to capture the essence of Major General Dr. Henry Edmond Olufemi Adefekwe, whose sojourn on planet Earth was circumscribed by a recurring decimal. He was an officer of the Nigerian Army and a gentleman to the core.
3 separate fireside chats on his selfless service to trade unions, his commitment to sports development in Nigeria, as well as his professionalism in military, medical, and foreign affairs, enlightened the audience of the kind of man he was.
I inspired the writing of this Adefokwe book. I believe I got General Adefokwe to participate in a project on oral tradition, being domiciled at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He was interviewed for posterity. Sir, please reflect on your past. And he did. I believe I'm a member of the extended Adefokwe family.
The book is unveiled and proceeds from the sales are to go to the Henry and Dorothy Adefokwe Foundation for Sports and Youth Development.
Now, the book captures his life, the essence of his life. And his life really, even if it's coming from me, was a legacy of honor. And it also has a lot of history of the Jebo race, our roots, the history of the nation. It talks about the country, Nigeria, the various stages, it talked about the coups, it talked about sports. A large part of it is about sports.
Henry Edmond Adefokwe was born on March 15, 1926, and died on March 11, 2012, at the age of 85. In line with its commitment to enhance the practice of corporate governance in the country, the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, has held another conversation themed attaining the Sustainable Development Goals in Nigeria by 2030, role of national, subnational, private sector and community leaders. The event, tagged The Conversation, is the second in its series aimed at advancing the cause of good governance in both public and private sectors.
Since the last 2 years, the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria has been at the forefront of hosting discourses that promote and enhance good governance across boards, and this conversation is not an exception. The event, which is held virtually, focuses on the principles of sound corporate governance that can enable the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals.
The Institute is committed to not only deepening our existing platforms of interaction with our stakeholders, but also to continually explore and open better prospects of engagement with a view towards advancing the cause of good governance in both private and the public sector. It is this mindset that gives birth to the initiative we call The Conversation.
The guest speaker, Dr. Kande Yunkela, is the first special representative of the Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All, who is directly involved in the development of Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which targets access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy. He brings an enriching context to the theme of the event, highlighting elements that can help drive Nigeria's energy transition.
For you in Nigeria, projections show that if the world strictly implements what we call net zero strategies to keep climate change temperature rise to about 1.5 degrees, there will be a reduction in oil demand of about 25 million barrels a day. Think about it.
He also identifies consistency and determination as critical to set Nigeria on the path to achieving the SDGs.
Many times what happens in Africa is that you develop a plan for a nation. So you had your Vision 2020. You remember I used to come to Nigeria in the days of formulation of Vision 2020. You develop a vision, governments change, and people drop it. That is different from Asia. When Asians have a 5-year development plan, a 10-year development plan, they stick to it for at least a decade and drive it.
The Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria hopes to use this platform to champion the cause that will enable a better and more sustainable future for all.
That makes a perfect segue into business news. Here's Teniola Shobowale.
Thanks a lot, Amarachi. Welcome to Business News. The nation's total debt stock as at December 31st has been put at 39.5 trillion naira as against the 32 trillion naira debt level recorded in December 2020. According to the Debt Management Office, the amount represents the external and domestic debt stock for the 36 states in the Federal Capital Territory. Speaking with reporters in Abuja, the Director General of the Debt Management Office, Patience Oniha, explains that the total debt to GDP ratio under the review period is 22.5% and is within the nation's limit for 40%. And the Executive Director of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council, Ezra Yakusak, is reaffirming financial support to exporters through its various finance windows. Speaking at a meeting in Abuja, Dr. Yakusak explains that the interventions by the NEPC remain key in the attainment of a zero-oil plan. He explains that the Nigerian non-oil export products have increased by 56%, amounting to $3.45 billion in 2021. And let's check in on the stock market now. John Mekwa has the details.
Well, thank you so much. Welcome to the stock market report. It was actually a dead cat bounce as the bear returns just after one positive trading session on the floor of the NGX. 0.02% shaved off the total market value, and that amounts to about 6 billion naira. Looking at the activity chart now, mixed sentiment. Volume and value were higher by over 50% compared to yesterday's trading figures. And then we'll see for the counters, the banking sector has recovered, although it's marginal there because we see that Obiano holding did a 20 kobo gain to the sector's positive trade. But oil and gas took a very deep plunge there. It was down 1.76%. Again, supply shot 30 kobo, while industrial good remains flat from yesterday. Top trades for the third day running has UBA, although it's been overtaken by Veritas Capital. 3 million difference between them today. We still have one more chance to know if the bull will make it back to the floor of the NGX before the end of this week's trade. That's the stock market report. I'm John Mekwa.
And that's Business News tonight. It's back to Amarachi for the rest of the news at 10.
Thanks a lot, Teniola. Authorities in the besieged eastern city of Mariupol in Ukraine say up to 90% of buildings in the city have been destroyed by Russian forces in their daily bombardment of the city. The report comes amid reports of rescue teams in the city are trying to bring out survivors of an attack on a theater where about 1,000 people, mainly women and children, were hiding in a bomb shelter. Simon Pusey has more on this and other international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Ukraine has accused Russian forces of bombing a theatre where civilians were sheltering in the besieged southern city of Mariupol. The city's deputy mayor said that between 1,000 and 1,200 people had sought refuge in the building. Despite the scene of devastation, it's thought nearly everyone in there survived the attack. Here, a photo of the theatre before the bombing, the words children clearly written on either side of the building. But Russian casualties are rising too. Here, drone footage of a tank being targeted in the same city. As the smoke clears, a Russian soldier seen running from the tank to safety before it's hit again. The The US estimates that 7,000 Russian troops have died so far. Moscow says it's fewer than 500. Meanwhile, another day, another standing ovation from politicians for the Ukrainian president. This time speaking to the Bundestag by video link. Invoking the fall of the Berlin Wall, Volodymyr Zelensky urged German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to tear down what he called a wall between free and unfree Europe and stop the war in Ukraine. Support freedom, support Ukraine, stop the war, he said. The Kremlin has described the US president's description of Vladimir Putin as a war criminal as unacceptable and unforgivable. Criticizing the move, Dmitry Peskov said Joe Biden's words were likely to escalate diplomatic tensions even further.
You asked me whether I was called... Oh, I think he is a war criminal.
Mr. Biden delivered the remark off the cuff in response to a reporter's question at the White House. It is the first time he has used such language to condemn President Putin, and the White House later said he was speaking from his heart. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe and Anusha Ashori have been reunited with their families in the UK after years of detention in Iran. The British-Iranian nationals were met by their loved ones at RAF Bryce Norton in the early hours of Thursday. Mrs. Zaghari-Ratcliffe's 7-year-old daughter, Gabriella, rushed to hug her mother, who she had not seen in years. Gabriella was heard asking, "Is that mummy?" as her mother left the plane. Anusha Ashori was arrested in August 2017 when he visited his mother. In August 2019, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, 10 years for allegedly spying for Israel's Mossad. Britain's Foreign Minister, Liz Truss, welcomed them both after years of detention in the country.
Well, first of all, it's fantastic to see Anusha and Nazanin come off the plane safely back in Britain for the first time in years, and that is truly fantastic for everybody, and I think everybody across the country understands that. I've met the families. They're safe and well. People are in very, very good spirits. I think it's been a really difficult 48 hours. The expectation that they would be released, but we weren't sure and right until the last minute. So it's been very emotional, but also a really happy moment for the families. And I'm pleased to say that both Nazanin and Anusha are in good spirits and they're safe and well back here in Britain.
State media in Iran says 29 of 30 crew members of a UAE-flagged cargo ship that sank in the Gulf amid high winds have been rescued. An operation was continuing to find the one missing sailor, an emergency response official told IRNA news agency. 2 rescue vessels and helicopters were dispatched after the Al Salmi 6 went down about 48 kilometers from the port of Asaliya. Aerial footage shows a derailed high-speed bullet train on a bridge in northeastern Japan following a powerful earthquake overnight, which has killed 4 people. According to the public broadcaster NHK, 16 of the 17 cars had jumped the track when the magnitude 7.4 tremor struck shortly before midnight, but none of the passengers on board were hurt. Thousands of Japanese households still have no power or water due to the tremors, while more than 100 people have been injured in total. And Kanye West has been suspended from Instagram for 24 hours after using a racial slur in reference to the comedian Trevor Noah. The rapper posted about him after he said Kanye's actions towards his ex-wife Kim Kardashian were terrifying. Kanye has been criticised for repeatedly posting remarks about Kim, their children and her partner Pete Davidson. Meta, which owns Instagram, said the rapper violated the platform's policies on hate speech and bullying. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. Reigning African champion Super Falcons of Nigeria will face Canada in a double-header international friendly in April. The first match will take place at BC Place, Vancouver, on April the 8th, while the second friendly is billed for the Langford Stadium, Vancouver Island, on April the 11th. The friendly is organized to celebrate Canada's triumph at the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo. For the Super Falcons, it will serve as a good test in preparation for the 2022 Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang this evening scored the winner as Barcelona fought back from a goal down to beat Galatasaray 2-1 to book their spot in the Europa League quarter-finals. After a goalless first leg at the Camp Nou last week, Xavi Hernandez's Barca trailed on aggregate in the last 16 when Marçal headed Galatasaray into a 28-minute lead on the night in Istanbul. Atalanta wrapped up a 4-2 aggregate success over Bayern Leverkusen as Jeremy Boga's injury-time strike secured a 1-0 win in Germany. Rangers reached the last 8 for the first time since losing the 2008 UEFA Cup final to Zenit St. Petersburg, despite a 2-1 second-leg loss in Serbia. And it's game, set, and match as well on Sports News. I'm Victor Matthias. Thank you for watching. It's back to you, Marachi.
Thanks, Victor. And the main news again. Professor Chukwuma Soludo was today sworn in as governor of Anambra State in a low-key ceremony held at the Government House, Awka. The governor acknowledged the efforts of those who made his dream come true and promised to lead the state on a path of prosperity. Also today, the EFCC arrested the former governor of Anambra State, Willie Obiano, at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos. The anti-corruption agency picked up the former governor on his way to board a flight to Houston, Texas. That'll be all on News at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.